Good evening, everyone, and welcome to April's Open Mic Night. Today we have two speakers. We have Human Hudarian from Rafi USA. He's part of the Farmers of Color Network, and he'll be talking a little bit about his program and the work he's doing with urban ag policy. And we'll also have Karen Allen from University of Maryland Extension chat with us a little bit about fresh produce safety. So we are going to go ahead and get started in a moment. I think most folks who are on today have participated in open mic nights before, but feel free to go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat box, and you're welcome to include your website or your email, your social media, and then we'll go ahead in a few minutes and just get started with Human. Just wanted to go through our programs for the rest of this spring. So tonight we'll have food safety, of course, with Carol Allen. But in May, we're going to have fellow urban farmer Armand Melanian, who's on today, talk with us about stormwater management for urban farms. Then we'll take a break for the summer, and we're going to be planning some more fun programs September, October, and November. Also wanted to mention that we have more resources on our website, pgscd.org, and then we have a lot of our open mic night recordings on our YouTube channel, and our handle is @pgscd. All right. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Human. If you wanted to introduce yourself and also maybe give people some background on, your history with the county, I guess. And welcome, Carol. We're going to get to you in a second. We have one other person, so you can take a few minutes and I'll get you hooked up with screen sharing and all of that.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Kim. My name is Human Hudarian, and I work for Rafi USA. I'm the Farmers of Color Network membership manager, among a few other roles that I want to get into. But the main reason why I'm here today is to talk about some new work that my organization is doing with urban farming. Now, I'll give you a little bit of background before I go into the story of the organization. And so I am from Maryland. I'm from Montgomery County, Maryland, and I worked at Eco City Farms in Prince George's County for about a year in 2007, 2018, and that's when I got connected to learning about agriculture and the production side of it and the urban farming side of it and everything that goes into it. And so shout out to them, definitely learned a lot. And I also got connected from that with Prince George's County Food Equity Council. And so I learned a lot about the policy and the administrative side of agriculture and what goes, how a group of people can come together and change policies and build community that would support their local agricultural scene. So that was really exciting. So fast forward, I'm in this position now, and I'll give you a little bit of background of Rafi USA. So this organization's a little over 30 years old, and we're located in North Carolina. And what we primarily do is work with farmers in the Southeast, and we work on challenging what we call root causes of unjust food systems, and that works in different ways. So we have a lot of different programs to support farmers in the Southeast, not just in urban farming, but as well as rural. We've only now gone into a little bit of the urban farming side. So what we do is we have a lot of different resources for farmers. One of them being TAs, or technical assistance to navigate NRCS and FSA, accessing USDA programs, as well as we work at a federal level. So we do lobbying for farmers at the federal level to change different policies that we know that are going to help farmers, sustainable, small scale, mainly sustainable farmers. We have market opportunities too to help farmers in the Southeast with market access, and we also have different ways of communication. We have listserv, we have emails, like e-news that goes out that you can definitely sign up for if you're interested. There's a lot of good information, a lot of good resources in it, news, things that are upcoming for farmers that they can apply to, that might be interested to you. Now also on the Farmers of Color Network side, as the name might suggest, it's a network of farmers and open to join. It's free if you're interested, for BIPOC farmers, and that can be urban, that can be rural as well. Doesn't matter. And the main goal of that is right now is, I think, about 700, I think over 700 members in this network, and people can interact in different ways. Maybe some people are just interested in getting information. Maybe some people want to become advocates and work with us more closely in policy. As well as we offer infrastructure grants through FOCN, through Farmers of Color Network. And what I'm really here today is talk about the urban farming side, which is something we've moved towards in learning. A lot of our partners across the country work with urban farmers, and a lot of urban farmers are BIPOC farmers. So in our effort to support BIPOC farmers, it makes sense for us to go in that direction, urban farming. And I'm fortunate enough to be in this position where I have a little bit of urban farming production experience, and I can talk a little bit about what the policies are and what I've seen on the ground. And that's why I'm here today. I said, I asked Kim, who can I was thinking about, who can I reach out that has a lot of network, a lot of connections. And I thought, oh, let me just go back home and see what PGFEC is doing, what Kim is doing, what you guys are doing with Open Mic. So that's why I'm here today. So what I'm really looking to learn is, and it doesn't have to be now, maybe it can be another time. I'll put my my email in the chat as well. Just for me, I'm currently trying to research the Office of Urban Ag website and see what they have, what those grants look like, and what's going on over there. But as well as talking with urban farmers on the ground and seeing what their experiences are, and just seeing where RAFI USA can fit in to the urban farming piece. So I say this, in case anyone's wondering, when I say Southeast, the geographic scope is technically Virginia and lower, so Virginia and then going down to South Carolina and Florida area. But we also have connections all over the country and in the territories too. And so when it comes to Maryland, I was talking with my colleagues earlier today, and they said, because we don't necessarily work in Maryland, but we do offer grants to those who are part of the Farmers of Color Network. And so that might be of interest to folks, and help in some capacities with technical assistance on the urban farming side. So yeah, that's what I wanted to share with you all. I want to just sit back and listen to what you all have to talk about tonight. I'm going to put my email in the chat real quick too, so you can reach out. I'll put my my work cell as well. Does anyone have any questions though right now for me?
Sorry, yeah. Hey, Human. Yeah, so I had a question about, so since you guys technically, or maybe still don't operate in Maryland, in terms of like grants, I think this is the first year that I'm gonna be able to reach the 2,500 amount for yearly sale of produce to be able to apply for grants. And yeah, so in terms of grants, like what kind of help would someone expect from RAFI USA in Maryland?
Yeah, so the main granting program that we have available is the Farmers of Color Network infrastructure grant. So it would be mainly for infrastructure. I guess what I'm not super familiar with like the criteria of it, as I'm not involved on that side of it, but it would be for more what my colleagues would say innovative, a little bit different, some types of infrastructure that won't necessarily be eligible for NRCS, or for SARE, for example, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So like this year we're installing like a 500-gallon rain barrel. We're using the rain rebate program, but I don't know, like maybe that's something you would think would fall into that, or I don't know, greenhouse, maybe.
Oh, honestly, I'm not sure, but I can check to follow up, see what they have to see what the people that work on the grant side, what they have to say.
Yeah, and do they assist with like writing the grants at all, or like they just like provide you the grants? Okay, cool.
Yeah, we'll provide you with the grants. We won't be able to necessarily assist you. That would be unfair to the other people, but yeah.
Sure, yeah.
But we'll
Cool.
answer questions, if people have questions, things like that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Any other questions for Human about the program? Or are there any policies that you think would be helpful? I'm assuming you're talking about policies on a national level, Human, and not just the Southeast.
Yeah, that was one of the questions that I'm researching is really, well, maybe a few things, but really one is what the urban farmers, what federal policy, because we know what the issues are, right? But we're curious to know what are some of the potential solutions that you all see on the ground that would benefit your business, your communities, local agricultural scene, that can be implemented at the federal level. Now that could be like legislation, that could be, going to your representative or whoever it might be and saying, hey, can you introduce this bill and let's get it passed? Or it could be, it could be going to talk, it could be on the administrative side, on the USDA side, and going talking with a staffer at NRCS and trying to get certain rules changed. So either way, those being the two main mechanisms for policy change.
I think they're working on it, but I know that NRCS doesn't have a whole lot in terms of practices right now for controlled environmental agriculture. So right now, I think all we have to offer are basically energy audits. And like, I think the first year you could pay for an energy audit, and then the next year they could pay for implementing some of the upgrades for the energy audits. I mean, I've heard that there are things in the works, not quite sure what those are, but I think that might be someplace where you all could sort of chime in and inform the advisory committee in terms of, what might be beneficial to our controlled environmental ag folks. And Carol, I know you're connected with Neath, who's doing a lot of urban ag work, and you're doing work in Baltimore. So Carol might have some ideas too, just from what she's heard as an ag service provider in the field.
Yeah. Kim, all I can tell you is that on the produce safety end, controlled environment ag is starting to get a lot of attention on produce safety, which is about time, because what we do for GAPS and we do for the produce safety rule training has nothing to do with controlled environmental ag. And you have this wonderful misconception about the fact that, oh, it's so safe. No, it's just different risks. So it's a personal interest of mine, and I've tried to kind of gin up some enthusiasm in our department to get a conference. Just give me a conference where we can bring in a specialist on lighting, a specialist on the recirculated water systems that are available. So to take the small scale producer who's maybe challenged by some of these issues in talking about hydroponic, aquaponic, that we can have some specialists in one area at one time. Wish me luck, okay? getting backing from my department it's work. You know what that's like.
Well, if you ever want some urban farmers to kind of help, rally for the cause, we have some folks that would probably be very interested in this, and we chat too.
Absolutely. I am dead serious about this.
Good.
I've been wanting to do a controlled environment ag conference for about, well, like before COVID. Do you remember back before COVID? I don't know. Sometimes it's the BC thing before COVID. Yeah, for several years. And it'll get there. It'll get there. So I can count on you, right? You're going to help me out on this. Excellent. Excellent. Well, do you want me to roll right on into?
I think so. Thank you so much, Human. We really appreciate you. Thank you for being a friend. And if anyone sees me, I have this bug that's, you see me doing this and smacking things. It's not you or anyway. Just ignore me. I'll turn off my video. But thank you so much, Carol, for joining us tonight. Human, you're welcome to hang out, obviously, and we'll be in touch more. And if you want to pop into another one, anytime, just let us know. Because I know we've had some farmers take advantage of the infrastructure grants. So we appreciate your support.
Yeah, I can stay for a few minutes.
Okay.
And I appreciate learning about them, because what I want to talk about tonight is good agricultural practices certification. And I get so much pushback and misinformation from folks like, oh, I can't be GAP certified because I don't have a packing house structure. And you can have a blue tarp and a table. I don't care. You're going to get GAP, you're going to pass your GAP audit. So I get little pushback, things like that. And what's so wonderful about this program? First of all, it's a Maryland-centric program. Some states don't have GAP programs. Poor Virginia doesn't, but we do. And it's very specific to Maryland. And what's so cool is I'm paid by a federal grant. I'm free. I can come visit your farm. I can help you write your food safety plan. I can prepare you for an audit. I can do all of this stuff and I'm free. When's the last time you got that? So anyway, let me go into screen share if I may, because I want to further the discussion or the introduction to getting the computer to cooperate here. Hopefully everyone can see my screen.
Looks good.
Thumbs up. Thank you very much. Okay, so why do we need produce safety? Huh? Come on. Grandma and Grandpa didn't. What's the deedly do? And then what are good agricultural practices? And yes, you want them. Okay, you do want them. Or let's say I want you to want them. So let's take a look at what the CDC has when they talk about multi-state enteric, that's the gastrointestinal type disease outbreaks. The most recent information I could get off their website was 2017 to 2020, but that's pretty telling. Now, why multi-state? Because that's big enough for the CDC to actually sit up and take notice. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't intra-state, okay, within the state food safety outbreaks. So just kind of take this information that I have just for impact, okay? So in that time period, we had over 14,000 illnesses that resulted in 3,500 hospitalizations and 65 deaths. We don't like that. That's not good, all right? And when they drilled down and said, well, who's the culprit here? Well, it's our good old friend Salmonella, 186 cases, with E. coli at 39, coming in a close second, or a far second, distant second, with 25 of the cases being from Listeria. So Salmonella, E. coli, Listeria, these are all human pathogens that can be found readily in our environment. And a lot of them are associated with poop. In my job, we get to talk about poop a lot. Isn't that fun? All right, come on, baby. All right, so when we take a look at all of those aforementioned cases, how do they break down by commodity? Take a look at, and you're worried about eating mollusks. All right, no, maybe not. So there's our top four: root vegetables, fruits, multiple, that's where like you'd have mixed commodities, and vegetable row crops. Those are our top four. Now, beef does kind of come in there. So when we talk about produce safety, the statistics kind of are telling that, uh-oh, we've got something going on here. And this is why the produce safety rule was enforced or written and enforced, and these why good agricultural practices were brought about. So I like to talk about hazards. I guess it's the wild child in me. So anyway, a hazard is something that will cause harm to someone, in this case, the consumer. And with good agricultural practices and produce safety rule, we talk about biological hazards. We don't overlook the chemical hazards or the physical hazards, but really, I like to drill down on biological hazards because we can't see them, okay? They can be sneaky. And these are wonderful electron microscope pictures of some of our friends here. All right. So we know that microbes are everywhere, and a lot of them are good. Our skin is coated with hopefully beneficial microbes. Our gut runs on beneficial microbes, or when we don't have them, it doesn't run. Okay, so we know a lot of microbes are good. We know that as a producer, we have that wily spoilage microbe that can really mess with our lives when we go to the market. And we know that there are plant pathogens, but human pathogens are the ones that we really like to focus on. Human pathogens like us. They like moisture, they like a food source, and they like the right temperature. Now, they do have different temperature ranges. Listeria like running on the cool side, and E. coli liking that warm gut from mammals. That's the one commonly found in animal poop. All right. And over here are a few of those interesting outbreaks, not all by any stretch of the imagination. In 2019, we had the E. coli and a particular variant called 0157H7, which causes hemorrhagic uremia. This is fatal. This is not just a little spending the night in the loo. This is a bad one. And it was found on romaine lettuce. Only 167 illnesses. There have been worse. In 2015, Salmonella variety Puna was found in cucumbers that resulted in 907 illnesses. And if you think that the Delmarva Peninsula gets off lightly, 2014, Salmonella variety Newport traced back potentially to Delmarva, causing 275 illnesses. So we got it, guys. It's out there. The interstate ones usually don't make it above the fold in the newspaper, and maybe that's good, maybe that's bad. But if you're having trouble sleeping one night, go to the CDC website down there, and you can read all about the multi-state outbreaks, how they trace them down, and what the results are. Where did they come from? It's really kind of fascinating. It'll put you to sleep real fast. All right. So I want to talk about enteric pathogens. Now, I need to stay right off the bat that our number one cause of spending the night in the bathroom is norovirus, and that's not food-borne. That's usually a human-to-human contact, like the buddy you had lunch with and you're sitting across from each other in the taco joint. Yeah, that might be where it came from. But then we do have E. coli, and again, that variant 0157H7, Salmonella, and Listeria. Those are our big guys, okay? And you know what they cause: belly pain, sometimes vomiting, definitely diarrhea, just general intestinal distress, hopefully mild. However, they can morph into more serious illnesses: reactive arthritis, that hemolytic uremic syndrome, kidney disease. Miscarriage is linked to Listeria, and that's a tragedy. And it can even get into neurological disorders and, of course, death, which we don't want to go. So this is serious stuff that we're dealing with here. Okay, so remember I said, wait a minute, why now? Why is food safety or produce safety so important? Grandma and Grandpa didn't think about it. Heavens, when I was a kid, I ate the peas right out of the field. I still do. So why the big shift? We've got a change in dietary habits. People have increased their consumption of raw fruits and vegetables, increased by 24% from 1970 to 1997. The guesstimate in 2021 was that there was 139 pounds of produce eaten per capita. We've got different ways of processing. We've got different foods. We've got different food production. And hey, we've got new pathogens. Thank you, globalization. We needed that, not. Okay. But I think more importantly, we've got better documentation. There's greater awareness, particularly like when doctors are now charged with, if you go to a walk-in clinic or your regular physician with classic symptoms, they actually might record that. In fact, they're required to. And if they start getting a number of cases, they report them to your state Department of Health, who, if they get a number of cases, reports it to CDC, and then the investigation begins. But just on the clincher is more people are aware of the fact that fresh produce, much as we love it, does have this issue of potential human pathogens. Okay, so we know that growing in the outer, in the open, or in other words, traditional growing, we've got everything that's in the environment. So we've got many, many routes of contamination. And when we're talking about fresh produce, we don't have that kill step. What's a kill step? Cooking your green beans, kill step. Or pickling your sauerkraut, another kill step. Or making jam correctly, the sugar kills. Vinegar, drying if it's done properly. These all are kill steps. And that if those fruits and vegetables are carrying any of those pathogens, then they are rendered ineffective, all right, by that kill step. So it's the fresh stuff that we eat raw where the big risk is. So likely to be consumed raw. And here are our three big players: cantaloupe, tomatoes, and leafy greens. These are, when we look at the statistics, these are the big hitters. I still eat cantaloupe. All right. So can't you just wash it off? No. Those little buggers like to get into the nooks and crannies. Here is an enlarged picture, very enlarged, of microbes hunkering down inside the netting of that cantaloupe. And look, they're having so much fun. No, not fun. So you can't just wash it off. Likewise with tomatoes, there was research done right here at the University of Maryland that demonstrated that salmonella can enter through the roots of the plant while it's growing and actually hang out in the pulp, not on the outside skin, hang out in the pulp. Now that research needs to be replicated many, many times, and it actually has, but there you go. How do you get salmonella on your tomato plants? Using raw manure, or contaminated water. And then leafy greens. Oh my goodness, we love those. Their little nooks and crannies, which hold the dressing so well, also can hold some pathogens so well. So there's our three big hitters when it comes to causing foodborne illness outbreaks. Okay, and then there's this other sneaky thing called pathogen infiltration, all right, where washing the surface just doesn't make it. So, you know, if you grow anything that, and you're harvesting in the heat of the summer, it's 95 plus outside. The temperature of your harvest of those tomatoes, of those cantaloupes, the cucumbers is ambient temperature, it's 95 degrees. You've got to cool those babies down to preserve quality. And if you put them hot right into your cooler, the cooler's compressor would probably have a hemorrhage, right? So most farmers either cool them down with a water bath or an ice bath or an ice water bath. And that's what we have here. We have ice and water and blue dye. So let's look at what infiltration is. You see, as the lope cools down, it sucks in some of that surrounding water. Witness the blue dye, which means that when you put that dozen cantaloupes in that bin, if any of them had poop on them, there's a potential that now all of the cantaloupes have poop in them. So infiltration, that's a real problem. So you've got the netting, you've got the infiltration, and I told you, I still eat cantaloupes, but I'm a wild child. All right, so what can we do to prevent them? So it is my dream that every farmer in Maryland will take good agricultural practices training. The certification is not for everyone, but the training is. And then if you do a lot of processing on farm, you might want to segue into good handling practices as well. So these teach you procedures, policies to reduce the risk of contamination on your farm during your growing and that initial handling. So pre-harvest and post-harvest is covered. The certificate is entirely voluntary. So there's the training, which I wish everybody would take. If you start the practices on your farm, you start the records, you do your water testing, you write your farm food safety plan, then when you're all ready, you call up MDA, Food Quality Assurance folks, they send out an auditor and you are audited on those practices. Boom, you pass, you get a certificate, ha-cha, good for a year. And this is something that will open up possibly new markets for you. A lot of wholesalers require good agricultural practices certification. Some institutions do, some schools do, but you get the drift. It could possibly open up new markets. So just to give you a little background real quick, I mentioned the GAP, just the policies, the practices. This came about in 1998. The FDA published the Guide to Minimizing Microbial Food Safety Hazards for Fresh Fruits and Vegetables. And that went over so well that by 2002, the USDA started the Good Agricultural Practice Audits. Maryland certification program is right in there. That's part of one of those audits. Then that was the basis for the Food Safety Modernization Act Produce Safety Rule, which is a federal law. GAP, Good Agricultural Practices, certificate program voluntary. When you get to a certain financial level, you have to comply to the produce safety rule under FSMA. All right, so why do we need GAPs? Well, hey, look at all those cool tomatoes, nicely staked, white mulch, cool beans. Oh, wait a minute. What are those cows doing in there? Well, maybe your uphill neighbor runs cattle. Ooh, what runs downhill in a rainstorm? On your nice tomatoes. All right, there you go. You get infiltration into the topsoil, you get runoff from cow poop. And then water. Water, we know, is a really good carrier of microbes, both the good and the bad and the ugly. So where does your water come from? Is your water free of some of those pathogenic microbes? And then workers. Oh my goodness, we could not function without workers. But we know that human beings are little like we are, the vectors of the worst sort. We have dirty hands, we have dirty clothes, we have dirty feet, we do unmentionable things for polite company, and that ends up possibly getting on our fresh fruits and vegetables. So we have this wonderful crop, we've harvested, it's beautiful, we're taking it to the consumer, but we have a few more hurdles because, oops, it's going to run through a packing house. So this is like your kindergarten in preschool or your child in kindergarten. So if one kid gets a cold, they all get it. So this happens in the packing house. You could have really, really clean produce, but when it commingles with others, it can pick up again that contamination from poop. And then, oh, we're not done because, hey, you're going to load it in the back of your pickup truck and you're going to drive around the Beltway with it, aren't you? You don't think I haven't seen that? I have. You really want your beautiful produce to be exposed to all of the cruddy air on 495. So cover your load for more than one reason. So this is why we need GAPs. All right, so let's look at cross-contamination. I particularly love to hate the picture in the upper right-hand corner. Now, those are potatoes. You're going to argue potatoes have a kill step, Carol, but look at that water. It makes me really want to double wash my potatoes before I even peel them. That's what can happen in a dunk tank. Now, these guys are being flumed in on water, so there's a lot of commingling going on there. So we do have I mentioned workers. They're invaluable, but they can carry pathogens. And what about the wild animals in our fields? Oh my goodness, yes. So what do we do about wildlife? We've got some tricks up our sleeve. And then in the middle, that's windrow compost, and that's actually leaf grow. which is a really good soil amendment without getting into any animal poop. I recommend it if you want to avoid that totally. And then, of course, I go back to our challenges in transportation. Those beautiful apples are going to get buffeted by all of that dirty air. So, yeah, cross-contamination. Oh, and remember, you stack your bins so that the crud in the top bin filters down to the crud to contaminate everything in the lower bins. So you have to think about how you handle things in your harvest so that you don't improve the chances of cross-contamination. And I have seen bins stacked quite nicely. I was out on the shore watching watermelons being harvested. That's such a trip. I love it. And they, for spatial reasons, they had to stack their bins, and they put cardboard on top of the bin before I put the next one on it. And the watermelons were dry, so there was no water to cause any cross-contamination. So we have lots of tricks up our sleeve to kind of help you minimize that risk of hazards. All right, so the burning question, how do we farm in ways that we keep our good microbes, but we discourage the bad microbes because we don't want them interacting with our product? So there's a bunch of elements that affect the safety and quality of our product. We've got people, water, soil amendments, animals in the field or in the packing house, and then sanitation and good housekeeping. So what do we do about this? All right, mitigation. All right, for humans, we have worker training, water testing, safe composting and manure use. We monitor those pesky geese and other wildlife. We use pest control in our packing houses, and we implement a cleaning and sanitizing program for all of our food contact surfaces, including our hands. So where do you start? You think about your farm. You think about the hazards, all right, that are specific to your operation. Controlled environmental ag is not without hazard. You just have different ones, okay? So you think about your hazards, and then you're going to devise practices and policies to reduce the risk of those hazards becoming a big deal. You monitor your practices when they're in play, and then maybe you need to go back to the drawing board because maybe your initial foray into a practice or policy doesn't quite fit your operation, your people, your harvest. So this is something that you would work on yourself. And then referring to the Farm Food Safety Plan, you would go and update that when changes occur, such as changing some practices and policies, maybe bringing on a new crop, maybe getting that grant that we just talked about, so you get that really cool inline grader washer magic machine, all right? Or maybe you just got another 5 acres to farm with a handshake deal with a neighbor up the street. Good things. So the backbone is the Farm Food Safety Plan. The plan is nothing more than writing down the practices that you probably already do, maybe fine-tuning them if they don't quite eliminate or reduce your hazards sufficiently. I think that they have advantages in the fact that it helps you really think about the intricacies and the detail in your operation. When you look at several years worth, you can see how much you've grown and changed, and it's going to be good. It's necessary for a GAP certification if you want to go all the way to certification. And it helps you get aligned with the produce safety rule when you get more profitable and you have to comply to the rule. So what's in a food safety plan? Written policies, okay, things like, are you going to use gloves? Are you going to require hair nets? What about dangling jewelry? All right, these are things that you want to have a policy about. Then you're going to have standard operating procedures. Now, don't be fearful. SOPs are actually pretty easy to write. It's a recipe that your employees can use when you're off doing something more important, like fixing the broken hydraulics on the tractor in the lower 40, okay? You can't be everywhere at all times. It also gives employees their boundaries and your expectations. And I think that makes for a more comfortable workforce. And then, of course, I'm sorry, it does require some record keeping. I know, not our favorite thing. And For the MDA gap, we do only one risk assessment, and that's water. If you go further into USDA gaps, there's a harmonized gap and a harmonized plus gap. More intricacies, you start talking about biohazards and allergies, and you have more risk assessments there. But the MDA gap, the beginning gap, has only a water risk assessment. And then you're going to want some corrective action plans. And I like to think that you want to think about the what ifs. What if the porta potty falls over or gets knocked over? How are you going to handle that? Think about it before it happens so that you don't panic when it does. All right. So as I said, we only do one risk assessment in the MDA gap, and that's water. So what is a risk assessment? All right. That's taking a look at your hazards and making informed decisions based on that hazard or that activity. So you're going to observe your activities. You're going to look at the events. You're going to try to think, where is the break? Where is the challenge in that where we could have a hazard? So that's what a risk assessment is. And again, water is the one we do with the MDA gap. And so, for example, you'd think about, well, how do I use it? Do I treat it? Do I need to treat it? How do I mitigate that risk? Maybe just through application. And you'll do that for all the different water sources that you use on the farm. All right. So corrective actions are kind of like I talked about. So you plan for the unexpected so that when it happens, you don't panic. All right. So this is what you think about when you can't sleep at night, right? So what about you've got good workers, but one of them just doesn't get it with hand washing? You train them, you've got the signage, everything is going, but they always just like, they slip. So you're going to have to think about retraining your workers. I like to suggest a morning huddle where, you're going to talk to your workers in the morning anyway and say, okay, you guys are going to go out, you're going to pick tomatoes, you all are going to go over and you're going to take that trailer, you're going to pick peppers in the other field. So you're going to be with them anyway. Add donuts and coffee and you'll have 100% attendance, but maybe a little retraining on hand washing or whatever the issue is. Then I do love the enacting a spill plan if the porta potty leaks. Okay, so what's the first thing you're going to do? It's not call the company. How about contain the spill? How about put on PPEs so you don't get covered in manure? Yep, it's just like pesticide use and safety. And then you call the company, all right? And what are you going to do if you do have surface water and you've got a high E. coli test? What are you going to do? It's almost harvest time. You need that water. Have your backup plans, okay? And then you're going to write it down because this illustrates that you've done your due diligence, all right? If worst case scenario happens, foodborne illness is traced back to your operation, you've got the record saying, I did everything according to the book, you're good, okay? So it's good to illustrate trends. It's good records that illustrate your due diligence, and they really are important. All right, so let's talk about how the process works. Let's say, okay, Carol, I want to take the GAP training and I think I want to be GAP certified because, hey, I went to Jessup and they wouldn't take my kale. They said I had to be GAP certified. And oh boy, I had a lot of kale and they needed my kale, but they wouldn't take it. All right. So what do? The first thing you're going to do is you're going to designate a food safety officer. Again, this goes back to you can't do everything. So kind of divide some of the responsibility. The food safety officer should be able to retrain and possibly, what's the word I want? It's not reprimand, but definitely retrain, okay? You're going to go to a GAP food safety training class, and you're going to get your certificate of accomplishment that you've been there. Then you're going to write a farm food safety plan. Now, don't freak out. I can help you with this. I'm really good at writing these. And remember, I'm free. Yeah, so I can help you write your farm food safety plan. I'm going to help you generate your SOPs, or maybe you've got it under control. I've got templates for your monitoring logs. I can walk you through risk assessments, no problem. And then you're going to implement these practices on your farm. You may think about purchasing a new sanitizer. You're going to start getting your water tested. You're going to start documenting your activities. Then when you've got that all together, you're going to walk through your operation, say, okay, how is this working? This is looking good. Maybe you're going to think about purchasing new equipment. You're going to maybe changing some new practices. And when you're all ready, you call up MDA and you say, all right, bring him on. I'm ready for the audit. And because you've done all of this, you pass your audit. But don't freak out if you don't. If you don't pass your audit, let's say you slipped on a little something, you can fix it, call them back in, your audit, and get re-audited, and it's good for a year before renewal. So this is one of these, it kind of measures your standards that you've put in place, and nobody's going to fine you or you're not going to get into trouble, okay? All right. Let me get computer likes to just, there we go. So what is it going to take? Where's it going to take you? I mentioned wholesale buyers, some institutions, some restaurants. Where I really want it to go, and this isn't here yet, but this is my dream. I want consumers to understand what that particular logo means. So if you're in the farm market and up by your banner, you've got Maryland Department of Agriculture GAP certified. Consumers are going to say, what's that? And you can tell them, I grow my produce not only for quality, but for food safety. So I would love to have consumer acceptance here, and I'd love for the consumers to know about it. So here are some links, and I can give them to Kim for more information. But on that note, are there any questions?
Any questions for Carol? You can come off mute. You can drop them in the chat box. I know I had a question, Carol, maybe just to kick things off. I didn't know if you could share your screen and show folks where I know they're supposed to fill out some sort of exemption form for the produce safety rule if they are producing under 28,000. So I don't know if you can kind of go through just briefly, like what the regulation is around that.
Yes. Sounds good. So as I mentioned earlier, the produce safety compliance to the produce safety rule is based on a 3-year rolling average of your produce sales, and that's all of your produce. So it's much more inclusive than you think it is. It's not just fresh fruits and vegetables. So 3-year rolling average. Yeah, I know. So if you just start out, don't sweat it. You're not there yet. Get your GAP certification first. Okay. So if you make less than 28,000 a year, you're fine. You're okay. You start getting above 28,000, you're probably going to want to think about taking produce safety rule training. And I do recommend GAP training first, produce safety rule second, because GAP teaches you the practices and policies of how to make it work. When you go to produce safety rule training, it's all about the law. I mean, it's still the GAP, but it's less GAP and more law. So I think the boom, boom, 1-2 type of push on them. When you get in that 28,000 to about 250,000, you can skate for a while, but you're going to want to think about complying to the rule. And you're not really going to be in MDA's prime focus. They like to get the big guys, all right, but they are starting to do inspections. Now, inspections are a little bit more serious than the GAP audits, because if you flunk one of the inspection points, it's a bigger deal. Now, right now, with the produce safety rule, we're still under the educate before you regulate part. So let's say your turkeys like to roost above your grader. Do you have something over your grader to keep the turkey poop off of the conveyor belt? Ooh, you're in deep doo-doo, turkey doo-doo. All right, that would be like an egregious violation, okay, of produce safety. And it's one of the things that us auditors and educators, when we go out for a beer, we talk about these things. No, we don't. We don't. And actually, MDA has found very, very few egregious violations of food safety practices. Porta potty uphill from the cabbage field, that was a good one. All right. But so it's what you can do is you go to the GAP training, produce safety rule training. Hopefully you've got food practices already stapled down. You're pretty good to go. You can actually call MDA and say, if you want to do a produce safety rule inspection, I'm ready. So what you want to do first is you want to have what's called an on-farm readiness review. And that's where one of us educators, usually your local extension agent, and an employee of MDA Food Quality Assurance, and we come on your farm. We come to help you. We're the government. We come to help you. All right. We take no notes. We take no pictures. And we run through a series of questions that are just like an inspection. But now you've got the ability to discuss the situation with us. We can make recommendations. And again, it's totally confidential. It's totally free. It's another one of those free things. Don't you love it? And it'll leave you feeling like, okay, I can handle a produce safety rule inspection because I've had the on-farm readiness review. So GAP training, produce safety rule training, on-farm readiness review, you've got it made. And think about it when your annual produce starts getting up in that $250,000 range. Now, there is the qualified exempt status, which means that you can go through the training and you get to bypass most of the rules of the produce safety rule, except for one. And that is when you take your produce, when your produce goes out of your door, that your farm name and location has to be on the box. That's the only part of the rule that you have to adhere to. When you start getting up to $500,000 a year, yeah, you're gonna be inspected. So get GAP'd, even if you don't get GAP certified, take your training, implement the practices, have an on-farm readiness review. And like I say, they're totally confidential. We are under oath. We are trained under oath. We don't mention names or farms or locations or anything. So does that answer? That was a long-winded answer. Sorry.
No, that's really helpful because I think there's some confusion on when it applies. And that's good to know about. I didn't even think about, the labeling in terms of the origin of the product despite. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, well, Kim, it's just good practice. It eases traceback. And now there is something that if you'll give me 5 minutes more before you
Absolutely.
me off. So the traceability rule did pass and it is enacted. So now it's different than the produce safety rule. It still has levels of financial involvement, but now it's the lowest level. So if you're selling over $28,000 of produce on a 3-year rolling average, I just love that. In certain categories, and the certain categories are high risk. So what are we talking about? Well, we're talking about melons, all right? We're talking about tomatoes, leafy greens, cucumbers, peppers, and it goes on beyond that into actually cheeses, eggs, shellfish, and a whole bunch of other things. So if you're producing any of those products, you are susceptible, or let's say you're vulnerable, or you could fall under the traceability rule. Now, it's not going to be enacted until 2026. So you have time to think about it. So if you're well into your GAP certification, you think about produce safety rule, you grow some of those products, again, invite me to your farm and let's talk about the traceability rule. We've got a few years, but if you're thinking ahead. So Kim, any more questions?
Do you think they'll ever, at some point will everyone, hey Carol, at some point will everyone be subject to the produce safety rule, even those under 28,000?
No, I don't think so, because it really is a matter of money.
Okay.
It's a matter of having, okay, so first of all, produce safety rule. Maryland is really, really lucky because the produce safety rule is handled in state. So it's our own MDA folks who hopefully know Maryland farmers, know Maryland producers, know the challenges that we have specific for Maryland. Other states that are not so well endowed with their Department of Ag, they have federal people come in and do their produce safety rules stuff. And I like to think our MDA folks are nice and warm and fuzzy, all right, and not like Fed agents. So we're lucky in that. But no, I don't think that. I think when it comes right down to it, it's
Does anyone
not.
else have any questions?
What?
Oh, so I think there was a lag. I was just asking if anyone else had any questions. Keep going, Carol, sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. So no, I don't think it's ever going to affect people under 28,000. But you know, Kim, I gap train anybody who wants to be gap trained. I will go out to master gardeners because they might work in their community garden or their church garden with all the food going to the food bank. Hey, we don't want to make those folks sick either. So there you go. I will train anybody.
It's good practice in general. I think it's a good thing to do and to know about, but it's also important for people to understand, you know, where they fit into the regulation. So
Yeah.
thank you for what you do.
Oh, my pleasure. Going on farms and talking to farmers and looking at all of the produce, all of the different kinds of operations we have in Maryland. I like it. I think it's fun.
Hey, Carol,
Yeah.
I just sent you a thank you note for looking into my certification.
You'll get
certificate.
it. You'll get it.
Okay.
There was a little hiccup in the paperwork.
Great. Thank you.
Not a problem. Thank you for attending the GAP training. Renee.
Hi, Carol. This is Renee. I attended your training during COVID, and that was actually right after meeting Tim. And I am food certified in another state, but I just wanted to share with the group that it is definitely a training worth taking, because the food certification that I have and that I understand is a little different when it comes to the farm. And just knowing what those practices are, I mean, it's integrated for me, you know, working in public health, there's certain practices we have to do. I said, but this was it was helpful, it was seamless, and it was easy. We did it online, so that was a little easier than physically going anywhere. But I just wanted to say thank you, because you made it, and the explanation of what to do and who's next and all of that, just like you did here tonight. And I definitely have to welcome you out to the Master Gardeners program in Clinton, because we are doing a lot of work. I do the compost piece, and it's interesting because when you get certified in these different areas as a farmer, it makes you a better gardener and a homesteader and just a person that understands practices. So I just wanted to say thank you, because and tell the group, take the class, it's free.
Yeah, take the class. It's fun. Just to give you just a little glimpse of what my life is like. So Saturday, do you remember Saturday? Saturday, the weather didn't settle down and do any one thing. It decided to run through its full repertoire, right? So I was up at Plantation Park Heights Urban Farm in Baltimore, and I was teaching a GAP class in a greenhouse. It was fine for the morning because it was cloudy, but then the sun came out. So then we went outside, but then the thunderstorm came and we went back inside. So I taught a GAP class in 3 different locations to a dozen very, very enthralled people that were very excited about our being there. So yeah, so I mean, when it gets hotter, can I have some air conditioning, please? Or at least a big fan. So we will take it on the road. And this July, again, we're going to be back up at Plantation Park Heights Urban Farm, and we're going to be doing 2 back-to-back 4-hour hands-on training for I think it's their AmeriCorps workers. So I will be teaching high schoolers. Oh my God. But we're not doing, this is not a certification class, but it's a way to get younger folks to understand food safety and then do it. And if you've never been to Plantation Park Heights Urban Farm, oh my goodness, you gotta go. It is just such a wonderful, wonderful community garden and such a great effort by Farmer Tierra and Farmer Chippy. It's wild there. It's great. So Kim, any more questions?
I think that's it for me. And I don't know if any of our other folks do. But if you don't mind dropping your email, Carol, in the chat box. I think I put your website in there and then this way folks can follow up with you. And you're welcome at any time to teach any sort of gap training from I know you've been working with Terry. So we're always, amenable if you need a location for a training.
I please do. I'm finding that, Kim, what's really been working, okay, so I have gap trained close to 100 people this season.
Wow.
Do you know how excited I am about that? Oh my God, that is phenomenal. But I found that the best way to work for us is to have a group, a church group, a community garden group, like Plantation Park Heights, okay? Come up with a location, then we can come in, we can do the training. And that way see, if I pick a date and I advertise it in our newsletter, okay, we're gonna have a gap training on blah, 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 blah date. I get 5 people.
I hear
When
you.
I have an
Okay.
organization put it together, then I've got 25 people, big smile on my face, okay?
Yep.
So
Makes sense.
anybody who's got a group that would like to be the core and has a location, I'll be there.
Okay.
Just call my name.
Thank you. And you're going to be working with the Urban Farm Incubator this year as well, right?
Yes. I've been out there a couple of times, walked through. I'm going to be there next week with actually University of Maryland class. We're going to do a mock gap audit. So this is going to be fun. It's for the students.
Sure.
But I think it's such a wonderful resource to have right there. I mean, in PG County, could we have better? So I'm looking forward to utilizing it a lot more.
Awesome. Well, anything else before we end with Miss Carol? That was awesome. We appreciate you. And if anyone wants to, Carol actually has a fantastic newsletter. So if anybody, is interested in just, reading bite-sized pieces of information on food safety, she had something about controlled environmental ag just this last week, or was it last week? Anyway, one of these weeks.
No, actually it's a series of 3 weeks and I think I'm done with it now.
Okay.
Yes,
But it's online.
Kim?
Yeah, go ahead, Roger.
Okay, Carol. Yeah, you shared 2 slides when you were ending up. Can you share those again? They went kind of fast.
Oh, how about I cut and paste them and put them in the chat?
That's fine.
Will that work for you?
Yes.
All right, Kim, you're not done, are you? There's going to be more and I'll have
Oh
time.
yeah. We'll probably, we're almost done, but what I'm going to do is probably do sort of a more formal, thank you, Carol, and we're ending, but then we usually talk and have some announcements. So take your time. The other thing I was going to say, if you send me a PDF version of your presentation, I can always send that out with the recording, because there are that signed up that didn't make it tonight, and I usually send it out to our Google group anyway. So
I am writing myself a note right now. And Roger, I will go ahead and pull those links and put them in the chat.
Renee, did you have a question?
Thank
or is
you.
your hand up from before?
No, I'm sorry. That was from before. I thought it went down.
Oh, no worries. Just wanted to
got
make sure I didn't miss it.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Well, we're going to have announcements in just a second, but I just wanted to thank everyone for coming this evening and sharing in information and time with Carol from University of Maryland Extension. It's always a pleasure to have you in our county and joining our urban farmers and our farmers in general. And so we appreciate all of your support. So if anyone has any additional questions, you have Carol's email.
And we will look forward to seeing you at the next open mic night, which will be with Armand on urban stormwater management. And that will be in May. And we always meet on the third Tuesday of the month at 7. So thank you again. We really appreciate it. And I'm trying to stop the recording.